What is the biggest cultural misstep you've seen a tourist take? Currently work at a hotel in Banff, Alberta. There was an incident a couple of months ago where an Asian man misunderstood the concept of bear spray. He thought that bear spray was a form of bear repellent. He bear maced his children point blank in the hotel lobby. For anyone curious, bear mace is on average about 10x as powerful as standard pepper spray. My dad tried to buy these really cool shakers from the chief of Vandalism village in Zimbabwe. Like he really tried. Offered a lot of cash. Totally a cultural misstep. See, when a man makes this instrument, used in ritual religious ceremonies, the first time he dances in them his soul goes into them. And that is where your soul resides until you make and dance in a new pair. So, my dad was trying to buy a man's soul. It was incredibly inappropriate and they just had no basis of understanding. When we were leaving, though, the chief ran up to our truck and gave my dad an old pair of this instrument, i.e. no soul anymore. My dad was so excited and tried to pay him back. That was when our tour guide figured out what was going on. Told my dad, and then my dad just thanked the man profusely and there were big hugs all around. TLDR, my dad tried to buy a man's soul. A while back at Marrakesh train station, a friend of mine accidentally mistook the place where Muslims perform wudu, a cleaning ritual of the hands and feet before prayer, as a urinal. The worst thing was he realized when someone started shouting at him, with his thing still his hand struggling to get it to stop flowing. I've never seen anyone so horrified about the mistake that they had just made. Oh no, that is really, very bad. I just returned from Mexico, where instead of ordering a torta de cochinita, basically slow roasted pork, I ordered a torta de conchita, a vagina sandwich, a sandwich of vagina. I was in the Kruger National Park in South Africa and a large group of Dutch tourists were in the restaurant bitching about everything. The food was terrible, the service bad, they were too hot, and how they pretty much hated SAR and everyone in it. They were doing so at the top of their lungs in Dutch, presuming no one else could understand them. They obviously hadn't been there long enough to realize that Afrikaans is very similar to Dutch. Every local in the place knew exactly what they were saying. My parents were traveling for the first time in Germany, their first time in Europe actually. One day they were getting hungry and tired wandering around the streets of Munich, so were looking for a place to eat. They came across a place that had looked nice, with a lot of people laughing, eating and drinking in a large back patio. Not speaking a word of German, they found a couple empty chairs and sat down, waiting for the server. Someone came over and tried to engage them, but as they didn't speak German, and the person didn't speak English, it didn't get very far, looking around for a menu at least, in the hopes they might be able to recognize something. They were pleasantly surprised when the person came back with steins of beer, sausages, etc. For them, they ended up having a great time with the group, laughing and singing in unknown languages. After a couple hours, the bride and groom showed up and were introduced to my parents. They said you could have heard a pin drop for about 5 seconds when everyone stopped to watch the horror come across my parents' faces. Then everyone, parents included, laughing till they cried. 20 years later, they are still in touch with the bride's parents, and various relatives have come to stay with my parents in Canada. 20 years ago, I had trouble finding Germans that wouldn't speak English to me. My mom used to be a tour guide in Greece and one day she took a group of French tourists to Delphi. Apparently, one Frenchman decided that a little piece of a temple would make a nice souvenir, which he proceeded to hack off with a little chisel he had brought. My mom didn't realize this had happened until another Frenchman on the tour went to the Greek police and had the other one arrested, declaring him something along the lines of a disgrace to France. I'm amazed someone actually thought to pack a chisel on a trip to Greece. In Uganda it is common to use rhetorical questions, a lot. In conversation example I went to the what? Pause to the store, to buy what? Pause soap, and so on. The pause can be quite long. I watched a young foreign woman react as if she was being quizzed. I don't know, where did you go? Did we already talk about this? She was so confused, it was quite funny. I saw De La Soul give a shout out to Glasgow, England during a gig. Quickest I've seen gig go bad. If there's Scottish people you don't want to confuse with English people, it's Glaswegians. In the late 1990s, a German friend was traveling in the States and remarked at how sexually open our culture was, much more liberal than his expectations. When I pressed him as to why he felt that way, it turned out he mistook all the nicely dressed office ladies hanging around downtown as prostitutes. They were all just taking their cigarette breaks. Apparently German streetwalkers dress for success. When I was in Ladakh, India, I stayed on various homestays. It's similar to Tibetan culture, so people eat their meals while sitting on the ground with no table. At dinner time I would step right on top of their table carpet. I didn't know it was a thing. The family was appalled. Can you imagine a stranger coming into your house and just standing on your dining room table while you eat? In your defense, our tables are clearly not for standing on. A Chinese woman and her husband snapping photos of me and my wife as we were conducting our marriage ceremony in the SF City Hall. She kept getting between us and the justice and loudly talking to her husband in Chinese the whole time. Saw a guy try to order a course at St. James Gate where they make Guinness. My twin cousins are 400 plus pounds, 181 plus kg. They live in a tiny town in the Midwest. On 3 separate occasions during their vacations to larger metropolitan areas, they have been stopped by Asian tourists and asked to pose for a photo. Jokes of Godzilla aside, somewhere there are multiple small Asian families with photo albums containing the day we met the fat Americans. TLDR, when my fat cousins travel, they are the tourist attraction. It's better than snapping pictures of them from a distance IMO, which is what us Americans do to our fellow 400-pound Americans at theme parks. Once I saw tourists smiling on the London Underground. At the 9/11 memorial there's a survivor tree that was recovered from the rubble. A tour guide was talking about how it symbolized hope when an Indian tourist tried to break a twig off of it as a souvenir. I was on a flight to Frankfurt, Germany last year, and there was a group of college girls who were starting a backpacking trip on the same flight. One girl, maybe 19 years old, dressed in bright pink sweatpants and hoodie with some sorority symbol on it. She is seated next to a German man in his mid-40s and starts chatting with him. Literally before the flight even takes off, the girl is saying, "Oh, we don't blame all of you for Hitler, but were you or your parents like that back then?" and a number of other Nazi-themed conversation points. Everyone around was super uncomfortable. It was delightful. Was at the Museum of Modern Art in Nick looking at Starry Night when an Asian woman burst through the crowd and bent forward to touch it right on the canvas. When a nearby guard yelped in surprise and immediately told her stand back, she looked offended. Not me, but a friend who had just immigrated to America from Germany at the time. He got pulled over by a cop for speeding. Now, in America, someone who gets pulled over stays in their vehicle and lets the cop approach their car. In Germany it's a bit different. So this guy gets out of his car and approaches the cop car as he always has in Germany, and the cop flips out. This cop jumps out of his car, weapon drawn, shouting, "Get on the ground. Get on the ground." Of course my friend immediately falls to the ground with his arms out. He says the cop was sweating and his gun was trembling and everything. Within a few minutes the two had worked it out and all was understood, but according to him the cop looked extremely shaken by the whole thing. One of the best parts of living in Montreal was the constant crossing of the roads of the English and French worlds. Even living side by side, English people are always handshakers upon meeting and French are always kissers, one on each cheek there. The best moments were seeing the reactions of poor unsuspecting English men and women meeting French men and having these complete strangers diving in to kiss them right after being introduced. The reaction is less pronounced when a woman is doing the diving. As a scientist constantly working between English and French institutions, I witness these social smooch catastrophes pretty regularly. Vive la différence. In Russia, it is extremely unlucky to shake hands with someone over the threshold of a door. Upon meeting my host father, I habitually extended my hand over the threshold of his front door, to which he literally smacked it away and swore at me, saying I was not allowed to stay in his house. I was allowed in after my host's mother berated him for being impolite, but that night he had that look in his eye when we exchanged glances like, "You sorcerer." I did buy him a bottle of vodka a day later and all was forgotten. Another amusing misstep with Russian hosts is the whole filling the glass of females near you. This doesn't seem to be taught much before you go. The women won't ask for you to fill their glass, and you don't know that you're supposed to, so they just sit there, gently shoving their glass toward you, thirsty as heck, and you're just confused. Refusing tea anywhere in the Middle East. Wore shoes inside my wife's grandparents' place, rural Japan. Got screamed at by grandma and chased off to the entrance. Now I even take shoes off inside my own house for fear of an elderly woman jumping out of the closet and charging at me like a serial killer. You have been visited by the sheep of safe travel. Comment have a nice trip. Doggo for safe and heckin' great trips in the future. I hope you enjoyed the video and learned what not to do when traveling. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.